Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Johnny.
And we're gonna talk about movies.
Horror movies, to be exact.
Because this is Gutted, and that's what we do. Insidious, 2010. The opening of this film starts somewhere that's not very familiar. We actually don't touch on the subject matter of the opening until way later in the film, which is interesting. It's an interesting way to set this up, almost starting from the end and then working, going back to the beginning and then telling the rest of the story. So the film starts out very gradually and it takes on this very traditional role. Once it picks up, it doesn't stop. It's actually one after another, after another, after another. You've got these really intense moments. And there's this scene where the mom is sitting at her piano, and this is after Dalton, the little boy, hits his head. He's been in a coma for a little while. It freaks me out for so many different reasons, and it's the scene right here. Holy shit. This is intense, right? This should have you packing up your things and getting into your car and never coming back, ever. First of all, if you've ever had a paranormal experience, if you've ever had anything somewhat like a haunting, you know that this is truer than true. This is exactly what this sounds like. Personal experience, when you hear something talking and it's something from the other side and it's paranormal, it'll sound like something you should understand at some point and it never quite gets there. But in this film, it gets there. It gets to that limit, that push. She doesn't leave yet. And she just kind of tells her husband this, oh, I just had a very bizarre experience today. I'm just tired. And you're like, what the hell is wrong with you? How are you going back in a house? Human, right? It's so much easier to just accept that you heard something and it was just your mind playing tricks on you than it is to actually accept the reality that your ass is possessed. Here's the next moment that has everybody in their chairs, including me, when you're watching it, when I'm watching it, going, that's it, out, get the f out.
There's nobody here.
I saw someone.
Okay, take her, get Foster, go in Dalton's room.
That door is an invitation. Just beeline right through it. Don't look back, just no more. No more. This is the point in traditional films of this kind of storyline where everybody's shouting, get out, and the characters stay anyway, and you're just frustrated. Like, if that were me, I would just get the f out of there, and I'd never, no, I'd be so much smarter. And then they leave. I was shocked when I saw that in the theater. I was like, oh, they're gonna leave the house? Like, he totally said yes? Cool, that answers, all of my screaming and shouting from like years of watching movies like this. And then they go to the new house. You're like, oh, well, we've still got like an hour left of the movie. How do we have a movie now? And then we get the big reveal. And the thing that I love about this was the subtlety, and it wasn't a jump scare. It was there was no signs or signals that told you that this was coming. And it slapped you, the audience, in the face, and it didn't hit your character, your main character yet. Rhodes' character is just doing normal, everyday things in the house, and she walks through the house and the camera is following her the entire time. We just see her back, and we get a nice, big, fat surprise. Children in horror movies. Why? I know why. I know, because they're so creepy. You could give them any line, you can make them do anything. Laugh, giggle, jump around, play, listen to music, and it's just scary as all get out. This was a very clever move because now the audience is dumbfounded. We know what to shout at the screen. We have all the answers. You know, get out of the house, leave, don't go upstairs. And she's listening to us. The character's doing exactly what we want her to. What now, guys? She moved. Little creepy in the house dancing around playing a really creepy song. So this is where things take another turn. The grandmother, Josh's mother, gives this reveal that she's experienced something similar. And she reveals that Josh himself had at one time been haunted. His mother has been through this with him when he was a child, and so therefore suggests that they get a seer or a psychic of some sort. And so now we have the expert. We don't see her first though. You know who we get? We get the Ghostbusters. These guys. These guys come in and they're the comedic relief. You want to hate them for it, but damn it, we love just the geeky humor and just the nerding out that they do and the level of humor that they bring to a movie like this, especially when we need it. Until we get to the point where they see a total Shining moment in the house. He's got this little toy and he's clicking through the scenes and he sees the twins of death. Anyway, so what's happening to Dalton, the son? And why he's in a coma, and it's because he astral projected out of his body. The dad has to go after the son, and this is where I get really mad at this movie. Not mad at the movie, mad at the character, the dad. The expert says, don't talk to anybody. You're gonna go into this realm where there's all these really, really unhappy beings existing in torture. Don't engage with anybody, don't talk to anybody. You got a mission, go get your son. First thing he does, he has a lantern, sees somebody. Hello? I'm looking for my son. Come on. You deserve to be possessed. You don't deserve your body. The son makes it back, but this guy, he gets what's coming to him. So last thing I want to talk about. Astral projection was an interesting way to take this story. It wasn't a possession. It wasn't a demon fighting for a living person's body and pushing them out. It was that a person willfully left their own body, playing off in places they shouldn't be, and the longer that body was left unoccupied, spirits who want to be alive again start to gravitate towards it like it's a beacon of light. And it was terrifying to watch and to see and to hear, and it was because astral projection, and just so you know, fun fact, this happens with or without your knowledge. You can do it when you're sleeping, you can do it by accident. And to you, it seems like you're dreaming, but in fact, you've completely left your body. So take that one to bed with you tonight.
All right, I'm gonna talk to you about The Mothman Prophecies from 2002. This movie, when I first saw it, I was kind of blown away. I was younger, I was in my teens, but I always was interested in supernatural, paranormal occurrences, and seeing this movie was just one of those things where it just added to that sort of fear I guess I had when I was younger, and I still kind of do today. This movie is based off of occurrences that have supposedly happened in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's really interesting to see an actor like Richard Gere come in and take part in this story. I hadn't really thought of him as an actor to be in this type of film up until this point. First of all, he has a wife in the movie. He seems to be very much in love with Mary, is the character's name. And they go into this house. They talk to this real estate agent, and they're like, we're ready to buy this house right now. And it seems like they haven't really looked at it, but they're ready to go. So they're messing around in the closet, and she gets caught by the real estate agent.
We were just making sure there was adequate closet space.
So I was like, oh my gosh, this movie's already starting off to be a really kind of weird, silly kind of film. But it's quite the contrary, actually. It turns into something very dark. The way that the movie's presented is very sort of this grainy look to it. It has a very kind of creepy underlying soundtrack. The way it's cut. There's a lot of overhead shots. Kind of gives the impression that there's something always surrounding the characters, which ultimately makes sense with the type of story it is. So anyways, this character, John Klein, that's played by Richard Gere, they're driving down the road, and all of a sudden you see this red flash of light. You see this CGI graphic of this sort of demon-looking creature, and it kind of hits her. And about 15 years later, I think the CGI holds up okay. Maybe you'll be the judge. He finds out that she's ill. She has this rare disease, and very troubled too. She was even on her deathbed was talking about how she's sick, having these images and things she's looking at. He's really becoming depressed, and he's starting to experience these very strange things. This nurse comes to the room and he says, she knew. She drew angels. He's like, what? Excuse me? And he pointed at this notepad, and he opens his notepad, and there's all these crazy drawings, really kind of alarming stuff. So already it sets that tone like, okay, this movie's getting really, really weird. So where does the movie go from here? Flash forward 2 years, and John Klein's still working as a journalist, as you see him in the beginning of the movie, and he goes on an assignment to Richmond. His car breaks down, he goes to this house, knocks on the door, and this guy recognizes him, says, I told you to get out of here, you've been here for like the past 2 nights, and he's confused as hell because that was the first time he had been to the house, and this guy says he's been terrorizing for the past 2 nights. So enter Connie, who is played by Laura Linney, a character that comes in and kind of befriends John. He starts to notice these very strange things. It was an hour and a half to drive to Point Pleasant. It would have taken 6 hours for him to get there. And he's like, I don't have any memory of this. These little subtle things here and there that the movie does a really good job at, and you won't really catch maybe in the first viewing. Like for one, his watch is stopped. So, maybe that implying that time stopped for a while. The residents of Point Pleasant even start to talk about this crazy creature they're seeing, and this creature predicts disasters that are happening. You get the impression that it's terrorizing Gordon. Gordon had this sort of episode where he looked in the mirror and he saw this creature, and he looked in his pocket the next morning and it had this writing on it that said Denver 99. And he was confused by that and says, hey, I had this experience and I don't know what it means. So it turns out they go out to dinner, and then the news report shows that 99 people had died in a plane crash in Denver. They look shocked, but they kind of like get closer to each other, kind of like uncomfortably close, and they're like, can you believe that? So it's kind of a funny thing. I quickly forgot about it because, again, this movie does a really good job of keeping the creepy factor alive. So one of the most iconic scenes of the movie, I won't want to get in too much. You really have to kind of experience it. It really adds a different dynamic to what they're dealing with here. John gets on the phone with this supposed Indrid Cold, and it has this very weird raspy voice, and it talks to him on the phone. And it starts kind of going off and saying all this facts about John's life, like where he grew up. He's asking the creature on the phone, what do I have right now? And it knows that he has chapstick in his hand. So it kind of gave me a little goosebumps at the time. It's very paranormal, and I've experienced stuff like that before. Not exactly like that, but I can kind of get the vibe what that scene was going for, and they do a really good job. That's one of the most iconic scenes, in my opinion, of the film. So the movie's stylized creepiness is throughout the film, especially from this point on, kind of the midpoint of the movie on. There's a part where I didn't even catch until the third time watching it, and you'll see here what I mean. The movie doesn't totally keep you in the dark about what the creature is, Indrid Cold or the Mothman. It has a lot of parallels with other horror films I've seen where they encounter an expert or they need to go out and seek help in a more spiritual realm, similar to The Exorcist and movies like that. So I really like that aspect of the movie, even though it's still very shrouded in mystery. They don't really spell things out for you. It's always kind of guessing. It's all centered around John's depression about his wife passing. So you're wondering, is he imagining most of this? Half of it? I mean, other people are experiencing with them. Most of these people have had traumatic experiences in their life. Even the expert in the film says that it preys on the people that have some sort of trauma, and it knows that. And what are their motives? We don't know. It's otherworldly. If there's any negatives about the film that I would say, though, is that the occurrences that happen to the characters, like, oh, what a coincidence. How does, or this disaster is being predicted, kind of wears thin a little bit after a while. You're like, okay, I know that this thing can obviously predict the future. It's terrorizing people. Now what? And it gets there pretty quickly. And that's really what makes these types of films really good. It doesn't spell it out for you. It doesn't have jump scares. It's not this monster you see constantly that's running after people. So these are the type of horror films that are high up on my favorite list. You know, it really is something that gets under your skin. It sticks with you after a while. I hadn't seen this film probably for the past 3 years, and coming to the show to do it and talk about it, just thinking about it again gave me goosebumps because I knew how it impacted me when I first saw it. You kind of have to give yourself to the film, let it do its thing. If you don't, you know, it can be easy to kind of point at and analyze, but check it out if you haven't. If you have, hope you enjoyed my sort of synopsis run through of it.
All right, so we're going to talk about a cult classic,
Yes.
The Exorcist.
Excellent. 1973, yeah. What a year for that to come out.
So you watched the director's cut version.
Well, it's funny because we had discussed this too. You know, I have only seen the director's cut version.
Only, you've never seen the original.
No, but I have looked up what the differences are. So I'm hoping to watch the theatrical version, but it looks like it's not, you know, totally different.
I was watching The Exorcist last night before today's shoot, and I realized if about 2 minutes into the movie that I have never seen anything that's being shown to me, and it turns out it's the director's cut. And it's Father Marin in Iraq.
Yes.
And
yes.
he's at an excavation site where
At
they
the very
find.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of the sounds are very organic. They're like insects. They sound like insects. They
Yes.
sound. Everything's like super loud that shouldn't be loud. Like the dog's fighting when he comes.
Footsteps.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When he comes around, he's looking at this giant statue of
Mm-hmm.
of the demon, and these dogs are just inexplicably fighting, and everything's just like super loud, and it's terrifying. But then it cuts, and then now we're in America, and we're not at all going to discuss what that was. Period.
What I did like about that part, though, was they didn't use a whole lot of dialogue to present what exactly is being unearthed, but you know that it's something bad. I actually watched it last night for the first time with headphones.
Oh!
That was an interesting experience, but you really get a sense for, wow, they really hit those marks to make things really creepy when they cut from one scene to another usually. It's just very... You know, it's like a loud sound all of a sudden. It kind of makes you jump a little bit. But I liked how they did that, though, when they cut to things. It was just very well placed out editing-wise, I thought.
I also felt like the movie was very silent in terms of score.
Oh,
Like the musical score was present. I think there was like one scene, Chris, the mother, she's leaving work and she's coming home, and she's walking down the sidewalk, and you have the very famous Exorcist theme songs, high-end
Tubular
pianos.
song,
Yeah.
I think it's called, yeah.
And it happens for like 20 seconds at most, and it disappears, and then you don't have sound very much at all. And horror movies, scary movies, have been very famous for their score, right? They use like really high-pitched sounds, unnatural sounds, strings, discordant notes.
Yeah.
And this was just like silent. You had almost nothing except raw natural sound, which was
Really uneasy
really
at
good.
times. Yeah, and it was done well, I thought. Everything borrowed in the film in terms of how the demonic possession happens originated from a Ouija board. And that
God,
was
I'm
interesting.
so glad that you brought that up,
Yeah.
because I was just so infuriated looking at that scene because they're so nonchalant about it. They're like, "Oh, where'd you get this? Oh, I got it from the attic. It's just a
just
Ouija
fun."
board.
Yeah.
I've been playing it by myself in the basement." I talked to this guy.
Captain something or the other. It was like, it was-
Captain Howdy or something
yeah,
like
exactly,
that.
yeah.
And the mom's just like not worried at all. She's just like, "Oh, well, what does he say?" It's
Is
like
my
a-
mom pretty or something? And
yeah,
like,
just very innocent conversations. Whereas, like, I feel like as a mother, she should look at that with horror and then take it and just snatch it away, just throw it across
And
the
just-
room, set it on fire. Like, don't sit down and play with it. But in the 70s, like a Ouija board was, you could find it in. I mean, you could still find them in
and the
stores.
toy stores, Toys R Us, so Target, they're still
like
out there.
a popular game you
Yeah.
can buy for your kids. So that was one thing that I could have been mad about in this film. Usually there's always something to complain about with horror movies, you know? And in this one, that would have been it, but in the times, like, it makes sense that they're just so accepting of a Ouija board. Oh, this is just make-believe crap, so we're just gonna treat it like it's no big deal.
Yeah.
But
Kind
yeah.
of comes back to bite them though, because of what happens. Also, I just like things that people don't talk about are like, you know, looking at the plot itself, why it happens to them. You know, they say, according to demonology and demon lore, that they attack people when they're down, when they're the most vulnerable. So, for example, you know, the father, he's had that situation with his mom. He's struggling. He's struggling with putting her in a home, so he's already very stressed out. He's kind of depressed. He's questioning his priesthood. So he's already down, and she's down too with the whole divorce thing. So that's the perfect opportunity for the demons
all of this to come
exactly
together.
feed off of that negative energy. So that's something they didn't really spell out, but anyone who really looks into it, and that's why I thought it was really interesting that it was kind of a subtle underlying thing with the whole film. And I think that's what ultimately gets people creeped out about it too.
One of the things that I really loved and enjoyed about this film was that it's progression. It's an incredibly slow progression going into, I mean, the normal life of home. The mother's very successful. She's strong and independent, has a healthy relationship with her daughter. Daughter has a good home life. And then little by little, things just start to go wrong. You know, we have the Ouija board, and then the doctor's office, the very first doctor office visit, she's just getting a checkup, I think.
Yeah.
And she just starts to do very bizarre things. Like one of the things is like she's hugging the wall a little bit, and the nurse is like, "What the fuck?"
Oh, what's she doing?
And then the doctor comes out and says that she has a very well-versed understanding of profanity phrases.
I found that scene to be quite comical for the wrong reasons, probably.
Well,
but
the mom laughs. She's like,
yeah, that's true.
"Oh, my little girl just told you not to touch her," so that's funny.
That's
but
yeah.
why? She's 12. She shouldn't even know what that is or how to say it or even saying it to a doctor.
And the
in
doctor
that
seemed
environment.
kind of uncomfortable about it too. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
scene.
but the next step he takes is, "Oh, here's some Ritalin. Prescribe her some
Right.
Ritalin. She's a little overactive. Give her some Ritalin. Give her some drugs. No, just the medication." And as everything gets worse, she goes and she sees more and more doctors. And there's this underlying theme that science is the end all be all, and any notion of religion is just laughable. And it's not until it's suggested at the very end, while Chris is all the way at the end of a rope talking to doctors, that she takes that suggestion, right?
Right, finally, because everything else is not working, you know, the modern, you know, there's nothing that they can do to help her, so she eventually turns to that, so.
And it wasn't even a serious suggestion, it was just a psychological, like, hey, you know, if she believes she's possessed, then maybe she'll believe in exorcism. It's like, okay, well, we haven't tried that, let's try that. And the whole time you're just super frustrated, like, of course that will work, of course that will work. Yeah. When everything sets in motion for the priests to come in and all of that, I mean, that's when things get super intense, and it doesn't happen until like something like an hour into the movie.
Yeah, it's quite a bit time into the movie where she's being possessed. I think it's the first time you see the really most shocking one, I think, is with the crucifix and the blood and what she's saying and what she's doing to herself. I can only imagine audiences seeing that, again, at that time in the 70s, like, that was probably just so shocking. I know there was like horror movies at that time really trying to push the envelope, you know, those lower tier kind of.
Yeah, but this was like next level.
This was like really shocking. It's like, wow, that's really on the movie, but you know, that really adds to the shock value, I think, of the whole thing.
One of the things I really wanted to talk about was the progressions of Reagan's possession and craziness. So beyond the doctor's office, then we have the party.
The party, yes. That's what kind of sets everything in motion, right? After that.
Yeah, I would call it The Exorcist, what the number one. And it's
you can segment it that way, right?
And she comes downstairs and she says hello to everybody at the party, very straight-faced, and just sort of does this, you're gonna die up there,
yeah.
And then urinates on the floor. It's just one of those powerful moments because human beings, when we reach a certain age, you know, this is just not a thing that happens. And if it happens, it's because we're absolutely terrified. Our state of mind is just completely gone. And it just sets everything off in motion. Like, this is not just like we write a prescription and here's some Ritalin.
And
don't pee on the floor anymore.
Yeah. No, and then I want to jump into as well, if I can, the effects of the possession, the head turning, the bed shaking, all that stuff.
Oh, when she does
yeah.
this, they call the doctor and they come in. She's having convulsions, and her whole body, the top of her body, is just like violently going up and down, up and down. Like even 44 years later, it was terrifying to look at.
Yeah, and she was she was really flailing too. I was like, wow,
Like
she really,
hardcore.
yeah, that was crazy. And then of course the going to the end with, you get both of the priests going in, and she starts levitating. And
The
that
levitation was great.
That was good. I thought that was really good in terms of just the effects of whatever they used to do that. It still looks great on camera now.
All right, guys. Well,
Yeah.
that pretty much wraps it up for The Exorcist, 1973. So if you have a movie that you think we should review, whether we've seen it, need to see it, or have seen it and just want to watch us talk about it, shoot it over to guttedreviews@gmail.com, and you might just see it on a future episode.
Yeah, and you'll definitely be able to check it out on cmac.tv on the website or elsewhere on AT&T Verse on local cable. Check the listings on there. All right, we'll see you.